picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
I've taught you everything that I know about taking care of the forest here. That's all that you have to do from now on, is just maintain the forest.
Well, good morning. It's week three on the fantastic Valley Forge build. As you can see, I've got a lot of the accoutrements laid out for doing the dome work. But first I want to show you this. This is what I cobbled together over the weekend. And I will put a little video that I shot Sunday in right after this. But easy enough to do. A couple pieces of scrap wood. And this is how the ship sits in it when it's ready. It's me. I'm on Sunday. I'm a little bit early for the week, but I just cobbled this thing together this morning. Took me an hour or so to draw it up and drag out the tools and cut up the pieces. But before I painted it black, I wanted you to take a good look at it. And that's how the Valley Forge fits in the stand. It has this nice little lip here that grabs onto the front to keep it from sliding off. You look at it from the side, it kicks it up at an angle. Not quite 45, kicks it up at an angle so that when you display it on a shelf, you can get it on a 12-inch shelf without it taking up. I didn't want to necessarily stand it all the way up like that. That would be madness. But this gives it a nice, refreshing angle that you can look at all the detail and see the work on it from a distance. Depending, of course, how high up your shelf is going to be. Mine's going to end up being fairly high. But when you put the girder work in there, it's really going to show that off as well. But first I want to paint this black, and then I'm going to touch it with felt, where it, put some felt in the edge there where it makes contact with the ship. You'll notice I've got some cutouts on the sides where the raised detail on the bottom of the ship lands, so that we don't end up scratching any of that. So you can see how the cutouts work, so that there is no contact there where the raised hexagons are. And like I said, now it's ready to put some black paint on it. And there you go. There's the Valley Forge sitting in the finished base with a coat of black paint on it. Didn't have to be all of that picky about sanding or painting the edges, because I knew I was going to be putting the stick-on felt there, so that just fits inside there, and it rubs up against the paint, but it does not damage it. So there you go. There you go. Now the first thing you're going to notice is that the parts, the front boom and the back boom, are not all the way in, because I'm not a madman. That's only going to happen once when I'm ready to put it all together, and that point has not been reached yet. But this is how it will sit in the shelves when it is, or on the shelf, when such time ever arises. Now this one is going to the client that will be suspended in air. The one that I am building this for is the one that I'll be building for myself later on. But this also helps just when I am displaying it, to get it up out of the reach of troublesome hands while I continue to work on it. Also, while it's waiting its final destination. And let me quickly pop a dome on here so you can see that it doesn't really matter, because the domes are at angles that trying to reach back on the other table here. You can kind of get the idea of how the domes are going to fit in. And we'll pull one more dome out. There you go. See? Kind of like that. So it throws them off at a nice angle. But the whole thing is displayed this way. And it gives you a nice ability to look at the entire top. And it's a beast. It's a massive thing when it's all put together. But now that it's stable like this, I can take it and put it aside and start working on just the parts that interest me this week, and that is the dome interiors. Okay, the good news is it does clear. That is, you've got a good half an inch. Now, I went and did a mistake in that I drilled out the posts here a little bit too much, and now these are way too loose, so I've got to tighten those up or perhaps even glue those in place, but that's going to fit just nicely on the shelf. Okay, so I am just taking some time right before I clear the decks off here to touch up some white paint. And what I'm doing is that I'm warming it up a little bit. I've added some what they called sand primer. This is the Vallejo Mecha Colors, and I'm using off-white with a sand primer in it. And I'm trying to steer away from a little bit of this really sterile cold white and into more of a warmer white. And while I do believe that it was, you know, meant to be white, 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 I think what a lot of people are reacting to is the fact that the paints have yellowed over time. So when they see an existing prop or they see that ragged dome on display and it looks a lot yellower than they think they remember it, and I think it's because the paint is just going bad on it. But I do see the need to warm up some areas and just get some variations of warms and cool whites on here. There is an area that is notable right in here where the 313 goes. Sorry, the big 313 goes. That is notably an off color, and I want to do something in here. I got to remember to get this camera, get things in frame. There you go. I want to get some warmer colors in the outer edge here. And so I'm just taking up a minute just to do some of that randomized warming up of the white colors. And then I can set everything aside and start concentrating on the dome interiors. Okay, I believe we are finally ready to start working on the dome the biospheres, the domes, the innards, the landscaping. Any of the above terms would be appropriate. There are 4 different layouts of these domes, and what Tony has provided is actually, well, the circles that pop into the dome bases have a laser etched pattern in them. Well, you could see that with this lighting. If I there, maybe you can see it there. So they have this. He provides this, and then also an additional bit that is made to match it. And these are, in effect, the roads. These are the trails that the little carts went on, and that the crew could use to access the various rows of crops and trees and whatnot. So what we're going to do is I have whipped up some masks that are matches to all of these, and what I want to do is put those masks down on these bases so that that area is kept clean from all of the mess that's going to happen. And I know that this procedure, this whole part of doing the landscaping, is probably going to be the messiest part of the entire build, just as far as the little, the little bits of landscaping stuff just going everywhere. So I know that that's going to be a mess. I have made peace with that. But I want to keep these areas clean, so when the time comes for me to glue these tracks back down, I will have a nice clean area for them to be glued to. So I'm going to quickly cut some vinyl and stick them down. If they don't match 100%, that's not important, because I want to make sure that it's clean enough that I can get good glue surface on it. That's the important thing. When it comes to doing the detail in these domes, we're going to run into a scale issue, because there's no way to make things micro scaled. They were using scale railroad landscaping even on the 25-foot model. So even at real size, they were already using some of these miniature details. So there's no way to take that and then further reduce it down to the size of these landscapes. So we're going to be dealing more with the impression of things than to try to make them the most accurate of things. I mean, you could go nuts trying to figure out all the different biospheres and trying to make them accurate, because in Freeman's dome, there was that whole waterfall feature and the lagoon where he swam and all that kind of stuff. And that's not, I mean, that was on the set, but I don't think it was ever accurately tried to be included in the models. The models for themselves were fairly simple. And let me grab a dome. If you look at, I'm sorry, I'm back. And if you look at your typical dome and you put your base in there and then you put the dome on top of it, the trees, these don't fit under these, the trees only came up to about there. There was still plenty of wide open space, so it wasn't like they were stuffed, fully packed all the way up to the top of the domes with trees. So the idea to me is a little bit of foliage, a little bit of an indication, some different colored landscapes, like when you see aerial photographs of gardens or big farms where you see different colors of land that denotes different crops. That's what I'm interested in. And then a few chunky trees in there. I think Tony on his site says that this kit is a 1/700th scale. So if you were to take this times 700, you would get an idea of what the size of the actual, I guess what the actual land would be, not the actual filming model, but the actual size dome. So take this and say 700 times that is the size of the actual dome if this ship existed in space. So if you take that and work it backwards, and you get a tree and you want to make it 1/700th the size of an actual tree, that kind of gives you an example to shoot for. Having said all that, I'm going to start with the desert because I think it's going to be probably the easiest one to start with. But let's get these masks on first. Okay, so I've got the masks down, and I've got the you can see where the yellow masks are, and that covers up the area where the trails will go. These trail pieces. I think I just need to paint them and get them off the table because they're doing nothing. Excuse me, nothing at this point, but acting as a distraction. They will sit on top of. I just need to make sure I have the right side up because they are not exactly symmetrical. They you would think for geometric shapes like some of these are that they would be symmetrical, but they sadly are not. So we're getting ready to start painting on these domes, these bits of biodome. Not the Pauly Shore movie, but the domes here for the Valley Forge. And when I realized I would be getting into doing a bunch of railroad landscaping of this type, my brain goes to the model railroading supplies. And my mind also went immediately to my buddy Travis. And Travis is a member of my modeling group. We used to meet every month. We sadly haven't met for the last couple of months. But he is the guy, he's the go-to on railroad diorama landscaping type of things. Each of us has our own weird little specialty in the group. I'm more of the spaceship guy. My friend Dick is armor and tanks. And my friend Dave is creatures and classic monsters. But Travis is the go-to guy for these dioramas and model railroading and all of the surrounding accoutrements. So I started to pick his brain about it, and he put me up a care package. Now, this stuff here is what I was able to get from the hobby store, which is wonderfully still open. And Travis gave me a shopping list of things that I should be looking for there. But he also set me up with a care package of a few items that I'm going to be using on this. And those include some grasses and some miniature trees and things like that. But I wanted to first just give a shout out to the man because like I said, I will be picking his brain and using a lot of the wisdom he has imparted to me. So we're starting with this desert bit. I'm going to start with Vallejo textured earth. And what this is basically, it looks like our thick paste with some grit in it. And I'm just going to paint it on here. Just dab it on. And it's going to dry with its own little peaks and valleys. And I'm going to try to smooth it out. I don't, you know, if it's southwestern / desert, it's going to look, you know, pretty homogeneous, but you know, obviously you can still paint this, but what this is going to do is give me a nice textured base to start with. There are some, even though that's not, the goal isn't to have wide open areas of grass, that I don't think is the ideal thing. You do want to have some sort of overall foliage coverage so that you don't see the floor of the dome in any one time. And by the way, use a brush with this that you don't care if you lose, because I don't think it'll ever get clean with all of this grit. I don't think that'll all ever come out. So yeah, just back it. I'm gonna have to avoid the temptation while I'm doing this to start going into the Bob Ross impression of all the little happy little trees that live here. So if you catch me bringing up the happy little trees, I want you to say something. I wanted to show you just how elaborate Travis got with his packaging. These are all the samples that he sent me. He put it on the package, like he put the package on the front door like it was a drug bust, and left the name on it, so I had to go up to his house and sneak onto his porch and grab it. But we've got things like coarse turf, spring green tone, we've got bushes, clump foliage, we've got conifers, we've got real Irish slate from Ireland, real Irish slate. So I am looking forward to using that, because he mentioned that slate has neat properties when you break it down. Brown polyfill, mystery green turf, ooh, that sounds fun. Bushes, clump foliage, dark green, green polyfill, Pennsylvania, Ohio ballast, number 5. Not to be confused with Mambo, number 5. Desert turf. Ooh, now that I'm working on the desert, let me pull out what he's got in the desert turf and see what is in here. Oh, that just looks, oh yeah. Now see, I can do this because the paint is still wet. I can, rather than waiting and then taking the a white glue and spraying a white glue and then sticking it down to that, I could just sprinkle it over the wet paint here and let that take care of the adhesion as the paint dries. I'm just picking a corner at random. Oh yeah, that's a nice color. Nice. And of course then you end up dusting this off or blowing it back in. The thing about this stuff is I know is it going to be messy. Very messy. I'm expecting it to be messy. So if it comes off as anything less than that, I will be delighted. So I'm going to distribute that back onto the other half here. This is going to be very much like Italian cooking in that if you don't get your hands into it, you're not doing it properly. Let me see what the real Irish slate from Ireland look like. Oh yeah, now see, that can be used as, where's my, oh, I must have cleaned everything up. I don't have my tweezers. Okay, I could take a piece of slate like that, which will be kind of out of scale here, but I could take something like that, lay it down as a piece of big huge granite that if it were in a dome of this size would be huge. But here, of course, you know, it's only tiny. So we're see that the ideas that we're, or the problems we're running across now are gonna, excuse me, are gonna be with us for the whole run of building everything. So I'm trying to learn my lessons now. Okay, I'm running into an issue that I think I'm going to continue to run into as I go through the rest of the domes, and that is these sections are kind of coming out looking planned and not random and obvious. And then I stopped and thought, well, they would be obvious and planned. They wouldn't be random looking at all. They would be set up as tiny little topiaries or tiny little lawn landscaping. I can't make it look random. I shouldn't even try to make it look random, because if, you know, the future government of Earth is setting up these biodomes and the parks people are involved setting them up, they're going to be specimen oriented. You're going to be, okay, here's this plant right here in this corner, and here is that over there. It's not going to be a question of digging up a random chunk of a national park and then plunking it right straight down onto the dome. It's going to be curated, for lack of a better term. So I'm going to stop worrying about trying to make things look random and trying to make them look somewhat natural. They're artificial by nature, so stop worrying about that. I've removed the masking from the floor of the desert. The desert with a horse with no name here. I've been through this desert in a dome with no name. And here is the painted metallic floor. And you see it goes over something like that. Now I've got a little bit of overhang on these bushes that I need to trim back, because it was, there you go. See, I got to pull this back here. And I'm wondering at what point do I need to put these roads in, because they are going to be in the way. See, that'll glue down. Okay, so we're working in the desert dome, and it's definitely the painted desert. And I'm thinking that the best way to handle these roads, where we're going, we don't need no roads, is going to be to leave them covered, like this as an example. Leave them covered, and then put your crops in, put everything in, paint it. Good morning, folks. This fine mess of a table shows you the amount that doing this landscaping work will just take over, given half a chance. It grows like weeds. It does. It does. Trying different methods and different ways of attacking. How many ways can you skin a cat? Well, only one, but you end up with a skinned cat. Playing with some landscaping. Trying to do some multiples, you know, something that looks fun, looks different. Kind of difficult to get the scale of trees at this level. I'm playing with some of these guys. I'm going to make some very tall trees for the center of the domes, because that's about the only spot where you can get away with putting a decent sized tree, would be at the height of the dome. And this is yesterday, of course. I worked on the desert dome, and I think I've got a fairly good handle on that one, so I'm kind of putting it aside. I've not, nor do I ever plan on gluing these domes down, because they fit so tightly that you don't need to do it. And should you ever need to get into the dome to fix something, it's certainly easier to do that if the dome is not glued in. But I'm working on the only other one besides the desert that has a definite look to it is the one that they're calling the field crop dome. And that has more strictly divided straights, and it's in the other room right now because I'm cutting little strips of the grass material to go in that to indicate the different crops that may be. I'm just trying to clean up, because this stuff, like I said, will get away from you in a heartbeat and just turn into a mess, especially when you're dealing with all this little dust of things that you pour down some glue and then you sprinkle the dust over it and then you knock the dust off. Well, when you knock the dust off, it has to go somewhere, and that's where it ends up going all over your table if you're not careful. So a quick pass with the cleanup, and I think we will be ready to tackle another round of this. Let's put some desert turf on that one. There are a couple of these things that I really like the look of, and I'm trying not to overuse. But then there are stuff that just is not really going to work at this scale, or it is something that you really can't tell the difference one to the next, what makes this special or different from another. So I like this long hair, this long grass, but at the scale of it, I don't know what I could really use it for, since it is too tall to really be used as grass at this point. I guess if you were doing wargaming or D&D or anything like that, that would be tall grass for that scale. Or you could even paint it brown and make a thatched roof out of it. But it's just too, I think it's too out of scale for this particular use, so it goes to the side. And being able to pick up some things and eliminate them actually makes it easier, because then I know what things I am left with and things that will work, and I can concentrate on those, and I'm not distracted by the things that just simply will not work no matter how much I would wish them to. And then the trick is to spray it with I don't know if hairspray would be the best thing to do. It might be to spray everything down at the top to keep it compact. I'm thinking hairspray might be a good idea. Just patting it down. And then one thing I did last night that seemed to work, I did it yesterday and then let it dry all night, was to take the scenic cement and just after it was glued down, just dribble it over the top and let it dry in. And I think that's gonna go a long way towards. It does take forever to dry. That's the only problem with it. All it is very, very diluted white glue. And in instances where I want to speed things up, I use the full strength Elmer's glue. But one thing full strength Elmer's glue does not want to do, it does not want to rest over the top of things. So here I can put a few drops over top of some trees and it'll dry in and lock those trees in place. I know that there is a way that you take an atomizer and you actually just mist it over the top of it, and I might look into that. I think I've got an extra spray bottle. It'll be a question of misting the whole thing after I'm done. It's sort of like using the kicker when you use CA, and then you spray you mist over the whole thing to kind of lock the glue in place. If there was a way to atomize CA, I think I would try that and then spray the mister over top of it, because that would really lock things in. Yeah, like I said, let me clean some of this stuff up, and then I will, once it's clean and I can see what it is I'm looking at, I can go back in and start touching things. And then wherever I am stuck for a color that I don't quite like, I can use my paints on top of it, just like I painted the desert yesterday. Okay, before I clean up, I wanted to go grab the crop. This is not the crop circle, although it is a circle and it does have crops. It is not a crop circle. This is the one for the crop layouts, and of course I'm going to put some trees in it as well. But I wanted to show you how I'm doing these things to start with, and I have domes in all different stages here. What I do is I took the domes, or the floors of the domes, and I put the masks on like you saw yesterday. Then I went ahead and painted in some various greens and browns and a little yellow on the bases, and that was basically just so when you're looking, if there are any gaps in the foliage or any gaps in the greeneries, you wouldn't see the white floor sticking up. That's the only real reason for that. It's background. And then I take these masks off, and I get something like this that has the white of the plastic showing through with the various areas of the dome sectioned off. Then I take the boardwalk pieces, or the road pieces, and I will glue those back over the white spots here, using the fact that that's bare white plastic, which means the glue will stick to it very well. And I'm using a very thin CA to cover that back down. And that also gives me a kind of a nice rim. If I'm going to use any liquid or anything, it kind of stops it. It goes up to the edge and stops it, but it also gives me my defined areas for cutting some of these paper sections out. I basically just put this down on the backing of the paper and trace it out, and that gives me the shape I need. If I'm going to use this landscape paper, I can trace it out on the back, and then that gives me an area here that matches, and I just fill it in like a mosaic. So now that I've got that much done on this one, and of course then I can fill in the areas with once those papers are down, like let me see, this is a good example. This has got a paper down here, then I can stick the plants and foliage on top of that. This is an area where I just took the painted area and covered it with a thin coat of the Elmer's. Did I use Elmer's on that? Yeah, I think I used Elmer's on that. And then I just dropped the landscaping stuff on top of it, and then you can see some of this where this glue here hasn't quite dried. But that's what gives you the mixture. It gives you a clean road. Even if the tree overhangs the path, that's quite nice, that's fine. But it gives you the clean path, and then I can just go through and wipe off, either with a toothpick or a Q-tip. I can go ahead and just wipe the area of the path off to clean the debris off of it. Run, Forrest, run! I'm sorry, I just had to get my forest jokes out. Going through, and I thought I would be doing this differently than it turned out. I thought I would be doing one all the way through and then going to the next one and then doing it all the way through. Hasn't turned out that way. As it turns out, I go back and forth between each of these and pick out certain things and work on that, and then go back and go over it again. This one is the least done, so I guess I need to work on it now, though. I went back and noticed, of course, you have this issue with scale. And this is always going to be the problem because, as I believe I've said before, the 25-foot model. The 25-foot model use a lot of the same type of materials that I'm doing on the 4-foot, that I'm doing on the 4-foot model. Now the 4-foot model is more than do my math. It's if the actual filming model is 25 feet, and the model kit is a little over 4 feet. You can see that it's about 1/5, 1/6 the size. 6 times 4 is 24. So we'll say it's about 1/6 the scale of the actual filming model, not the actual ship, but the filming model. And the filming model is using a lot of the same materials that I'm using, railroad stuff, which means that my stuff is largely 6 times too big. It is not in scale with the filming model. So that's something we're going to have to live with, because I can't make the trees 1/6 the size. Everything would have to be 6 times smaller. And when you get down to actual grains of sand, you can't but make them so small. So I'm doing the best I can here. So my trees are not going to look like the trees on the filming model. And I've noticed, I went back and looked at particularly the one surviving dome that there are the most pictures of, and it's wide open. There are some brownish trees in there, but if your whole mission statement, literally your whole mission is to rescue the forests, don't you think it should be like jam-packed full of trees and not just sparsely here and there? That's my thought for the day. We'll take for granted the fact that the filming model was meant to be seen at a distance, and actually the only indication of the forest inside the domes were where you saw almost a profile view across the dome, and you saw the tree line, like the skyline. You saw the tree line, and that's I don't know how possible that is to duplicate at this scale. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to throw some trees in. I'm trying to throw, I've determined my maximum height. This is the maximum height of tree for the center of the dome without it getting just up too high and almost scraping the top of the dome. And another thing I have to do when I'm making these is I have to make sure that not only does it look nice, but it does this. Now this is there's some dust going to come off of this because not everything is glued in. But when it's done, it needs to be able to hang upside down or hang at an angle, because only one of the forests, which would be the hero forest, Freeman's forest, is the only one that is standing upright. Everything else is at an angle or hanging completely upside down. So I have to glue these pappies down like you wouldn't believe. And I'm really just drizzling really thin CA over top of all of this and kind of encasing it in there. The fact that it looks anything like dry foliage is a testament to the foliage and not my abilities, because like I said, I am soaking this thing in CA so that it sticks upside down. So I'm trying to make some, some good variations here of what would cropland look like, what would small bracken and bushes look like if they were teased up to a full height, that kind of stuff. So those are the limitations I'm working with. I hope you can give me a slice of benefit of the doubt on this. But this is going pretty quickly, so I have to say I found a cheat way to make pine trees. Pine trees are these little gum tooth cleaners. It's like a pipe cleaner, only it's supposed to go in between your teeth. But it makes nice tiny little pine trees. So I'm going to put a bunch of tiny little pine trees in there with these. Okay, this is a good place to stop for today, or at least to take a long break and then come back. But I got the little pine trees in. Yeah, those little pine trees look pretty good. Do you think I need to go to Walmart and pick up another few packages of those teeth cleaners? Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome back to Dome City. And no, I don't mean Springfield or the Dome City in the movie The Dome, or the novel The Dome by Stephen King, or even Dome City from Logan's Run. I'm talking about Dome City, North Carolina, where we're making little quarantines. Yes, I've found a way to tie in the theme. I am back from lunch, and lunch today was Wendy's. Went to, you may be able to tell by the small frosty, it was a Wendy's day today because there's only so much chicken a man can be expected to eat. Michael's was not open. I mean, they were open if you called ahead and made your order and they would bring it out to your curb, which is very nice, but how do I know what I want to get until I am there? If the virus has done anything to retail shopping, it has killed the impulse shopper, because I like to go and see what's actually on the shelf and not what's perused on a website and hope and pray that they actually have it. Because I might see the thing right next to it and pick that up, not knowing what search parameters I should use to find that thing. So, no trip to Michael's. Went to Walmart, because Walmart is always open. You can always depend on Walmart. The apocalypse could come and go. The last cockroach, I'm convinced, on the face of the earth will be shopping at Walmart. And this is a time when you can really rack up on the, I needed to get some of the private brand, the house brand brush cleaner, interdental brush cleaners. Because I don't really need quality. I mean, I'm not to say this isn't quality, it could very well be. But I don't need name brand stuff when I am making tiny, tiny trees. Alrighty. I think I am going to wrap up the dome work. Not homework, but dome work. I'm going to turn in my dome work and get graded because I think I have got to the point where I am going to start overworking. And some of you out there may be looking at this and say, yeah, Lou, you passed that point a few hours ago. But they're starting to get a certain sameness to everything now, and that's not necessarily a good thing. And of course now you'll notice that I've talked about the scale yesterday, or day before, one of those days, how the scale of this is not accurate because of, you know, you can only get stuff that is so small. So and I got to tell you that I believe I have also probably put more work, not more work into it than the fine people that made the movie. That would be presumptuous and wrong. But they put work into the filming model so that it would look good on camera, and I put work into this display model so that it will look good under close scrutiny. And there's a different thing. There's a different set of circumstances that come into play when you do that. So I'm just going to move these around and see that you can get them in camera and see them all and enjoy them. Again, there are 6 of these. There's one desert and the rest. I'm happy with how they turned out. I really am. I think that it was a fun, nice little Zen exercise in tiny bonsai tree making. Alrighty, I went ahead and glued the or epoxied in the biospheres into the domes because why not? I can go ahead and do that today and let them outgas all night and then still put the domes on tomorrow. But this gets me ahead of the curve because I've already got this stage taken care of. So, and plus it makes them easier to handle because I can grab them by the framework instead of trying to pick them up individually. Everything here looks good. The next thing I want to do, I guess, is to work on decaling the main body, and I could start on that first thing in the morning. I think tonight, maybe this evening, I will put the clear gloss over the areas where the decals go so that they can be ready tomorrow. Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, and it's the kind of day that makes you want to pull the covers back up over your head and go back to sleep. It's a light rain going on outside. It's quiet out. There's no traffic. There's very little noise going on. It just makes you want it. It's just a lovely day to pull back the covers and go back to bed. Unfortunately, we can't do that. I got 2 good reasons. A, I got a huge order coming from Steve, so got to be tending to that today. And B, it's time to move these domes out of the way. I have got to find room now for all of the miniature railroad stuff that I have accumulated over the last week in order to accomplish this. But, you know, I've got a crap ton of stuff left over that obviously you can't buy just the small amount you need. You have to get the whole package. So would that I could make a big return on a bunch of this stuff. I bet you I could fluff it up and say I never even opened it, but it's got to, you know, A, that wouldn't be honest, and B, you have to break the seal to open the package. So I know that I have used stuff. Everybody knows that I have used stuff. it would be dishonest for me to try to return any of it. But I do need to find space for it here and clean these guys off of the counter, off of the worktop, because I need to pull back the centerpiece and do the decaling on that first thing this morning. Okay, it's decal time on the Valley Forge. Now, Valley Forge has precious few, hardly any decals worth noting, and they're all in this area on this side, and they are all in this area on this side. That's all the decals that are on this thing. There are decals on this big cargo container that Tony has provided as a base. I don't believe it's going to be used as a base, but it would make a nice paperweight or a desk module, so we're going to go ahead and put the decals on that as well. So what I'd like to do is first take some of the Vallejo gloss varnish and just brush it over the areas where these decals are going to go, so that it have a nice slick backing, which is particularly helpful on basically homemade decals. These are, although Tony has provided multiples, which thankfully hopefully we won't need, but thankfully he did do that. It's more important than ever to have a nice slick background or base to put these decals on, so there's no minimizes the amount of trapped air you're going to have behind it. So I'm going to just put on a coat of this where, or in the general area where the decals are going to go. And it's like I said, it's a tiny amount of real estate, all things considered. But you do get to end up with that little pop of color, the red, white, and blue on here. And let me go ahead and get the area where the big 313 goes. I don't know if it's a favor or not, but some of this detail of the decals is actually molded in. It's raised detail on the resin parts. I don't know if I like that, because what happens if the decal doesn't match it exactly? It's going to look odd. So I would almost have rather just had that been done as decal with no raised issues. So let's see, we need a big old we're just going to cover this whole thing here where the American Airlines. But aren't you glad this is American Airlines and not TWA? I guess maybe Trumbull learned his lesson from 2001 about putting TWA over everything, and then having, although I think by the time this was made, TWA was still a growing concern, so that might not have been an issue. But when you ally yourself with real companies, it's always best to make sure that it's a company that's going to be around for a few years. So and that goes there. Last, I finally have a fulfilling decal. Getting this guy on is fulfilling. This is like a whole bunch of running around for nothing. It's like there's 4 decals there on the bridge, but they're all tiny. The ones that aren't tiny are infinitesimal, and the ones that aren't that tiny are small. And it's like, that's all the decals. It's like not even a quarter of a square inch, or a quarter square inch of decal space there, and it just doesn't feel right. All of that, and that's the only little tiny bit of color. So at least these feel like a decent sized decal. Okay, I'm putting on a slightly brighter pass of the orange on all the girder work now, while the other stuff is out drying, and I have to be particularly careful to mask off the, well, let's get it in the camera, that would help. I have to be particularly careful not to get any paint on the white of the fuel cells. So I'm tucking a piece of paper in here, in and around the cells, to mask off the white while I'm doing that. And then this will get a nice flat coat, and we'll be dangerously close to fitting this into the central body. Greetings everybody, it is Friday, it is the last work day of the week, and it's also May Day, May Day, May Day! Yes, it's the 1st of May, and if we ever could use a May Day, or have to signal a May Day, this would be the time. Before I move this off the table, I wanted to show you the improvements that I've made. You may call it a desk divider, I call it a stand saver, because what I needed to do was add more of the stand further out to that side to counter the increased weight of the front of the Valley Forge, and so it moved the center of gravity from here to here. So while I didn't need to take this out, I did need to add this little extension to bolster the support on the outside of the Valley Forge. So it's got some wet paint on it, so I need to move it off the table because we got big doings today. And when I say big doings, I mean big doings. We're going to lower the boom today. And by lower the boom, I am colorfully referring to the fact that we are going to be attaching one, if not both, of the boom sections, the girder sections. So we're going to be girdering our loins today. As you can tell, I'm excited to get this much done. I think it's really going to add to it and bring us a long way towards finishing this beastie, because once the booms are added, really all I need to do is glue down the domes, and I have to decide whether I'm going to glue the domes down or leave them removable. I haven't quite figured out that yet. There are advantages to both. So we need to, I'm trying to fight a sneeze here, sorry. And I'm back. I need to attach both of the booms and then the domes. And there's a little bit, I got to put this bridge on here, and there's a little bit of tiny girder work here that needs to get done. But none of that I want to do until the big manhandling of getting the booms in has been accomplished. And I am debating really about how much adhesive I'm actually going to need. I think what I'll do is put them in place and then tack it with a little bit of CA once it's in place, because I don't really think it's not going anywhere, that's for sure. I think this is one of those things where it only happens one time, only happens once. So we're either going to succeed or we're going to fail spectacularly. And let's get to it. Now, the front goes in a lot more complicatedly than the back. And there's only one time that I can do this method, so I'm going to do it on the front. And that is to stand it up this way and feed everything straight down. Now, obviously, I won't be able to turn it around and do the same thing when it comes to attaching the back. So I'm going to go ahead and attach the front, get that all in place, and let's grab it and do it. Okay, here we have the frame, the framework, and I'm going to see if I am on camera. I'm going to adjust it so that everything is in place. Move the light out of the way. This is tricky because it's got this extra bit here that I need to pull out and make sure that it is not interfering with the easy sliding. Okay. Those are in. Ooh, this is tight sphincter time. This is butt puckering time. This is no country for old men. This is, you get one shot at doing this right. And I don't even know if it's worth trying to lubricate that. Nope, just rocking it back and forth is all I need to do. Okay, now I want to make sure that you see here, these channels here have to work their way around the bridge module, and this has to slide out of the way as that does as well. So let's, now getting to know when to stop is easy because this locks in right here, and then I'll know that it's been pushed down far enough. I have to pull these out. Okay. What is it? It feels like it's bound up on something. Okay, and we continue. That's what that's bound up on. Gotta pull that out just a tiny bit. Okay, I'm sorry if I'm blocking the view, but getting this done is more important than getting it done on camera. So let me turn this off and so I'm not distracted. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is in, and it took, I'm not going to kid you, it took a little bit of stressing and straining and lugging and tugging, and I had to be conscious of about 6 different places where parts had to connect and had to check, make sure something wasn't being held up by something else, but everything is now in its, it is in its bright, happy place with a smile on its face. And now this has just become a much more unwieldy thing to deal with, because now it's got a big boom sticking out of the front of it. And I feel like I should be quoting Ash from The Evil Dead at that point when I say, "This is my boom sticking out." I am checking to make sure that all of the little pieces of girder supports are tucked into the various holes where they need to be. No, I am not going to be gluing this thing in. It is, if you could pull this thing out by hand, you are a better man than I. So I don't have any worries about it needing to be glued. I am going to tack down a couple of these spots where the girders need to make contact with the superstructure. And I want to get that on a toothpick. I don't want to glob a chunk of glue there. I just need to wrap some right in here and then hold it in place. It is amazing that these girders have survived without snapping off as well as they have done, so yay on them. And then I will stand this up and do the other bits of supporting. These ones are amazing. There's another tricky issue coming up, so don't let your don't be fooled into thinking that the worst is over. There is some trickiness coming up in regards to getting the adjoining ones to come through this bit of girder work here, and I want to make sure that those are glued down so that the pipes will slide through them, because they're painted, which means they're gonna be thicker than they should. So I'm going to sand those out a bit. Let me do that before I glue that down. Let me go ahead and roll up some sandpaper and see if I can wring those out a little bit. What sandpaper would be best for that? Let me see. Yeah. I want to cut a piece of this off and then roll it up. Okay, I'm going to continue fitting these in and then I'll get right back to you. I'm starting on the back now, and this is going pretty well. This side always slid a little easier than the front, but I need to make sure that, let's back this out a little bit. See, I'm running out of spots where I can handle it. That's the issue here. Okay, I need to make sure that these rings are down in the gullies where they go. Okay, you made that through. Ironically, the best place to grip it is by the front girder. Come on, you can do it. Man, I got my workout for today. I don't know about you. There were some losses. There were some little cross members that got snapped that I have to reattach. But I gotta tell you, I had this thing up on its end, and I was using this on it to try to tap these girders in place. I don't know that there's a better way of doing this, but I gotta tell you, That's not fun. And it really wasn't the paint that was the issue. It was these guys. I had to actually cut the bottom of those off because you logically had to pick this up to slide it in, and these were already, you know, to fit in those little crevices, and then you've got this thing fighting right in front of it. So if anybody out there that is making this, I would recommend cutting the bottom of those ones off, or gluing them in place and then sliding, maybe cut this much of the girder system off of the 3D printed part, put it in place, and then slide your rods through it. There's no good way to do that. There's some gap right here. I don't mind telling you. I'll point that out. I don't think a human could have done better than that. But I can patch all that. I can make that work. You'll never notice it, except for the fact that I'm pointing it out. Now comes the time when I want to put some epoxy in there and lock these in place. And I said I wasn't going to do that, and that you really don't need to. Well, you don't. But the fact is, when this sits down, this gap opens up because of the weight front and back. So what I want to do is rest this level, put a level on it, and rest it so that it is sitting in the channels completely level. And then I'm going to put some very thin epoxy in there, or some CA or something, and let those get glued down nice and tight, so that when it is sitting level, those won't open up. And then comes the paint patching. I knew paint patching was going to happen. Ooh, sweat of my brow right there. I knew paint patching was going to happen. I think I've come out of it pretty well. But man, that was a tough morning. I've got a level across the end of it. I know the table is level, so I've got two things that are exactly the same height, which are the epoxy sculpt buckets. I've got them both sitting on exact same height material, the cutting boards. I've got the Valley Forge laid out. As you can see, the bubble is right in the center, which means my backbone is straight. So now I need to lay in epoxy and or CA wherever it is I can see it on the top of the body, top of the hull there, and then give that a goodly chance to set up, and then I can start repairing all the tiny little nicks and scratches in the paints and all of that. Alrighty, one last operation before we let this sit for an hour or so and get back to the getting the templates out today. And that is, I want to put some fine, very thin CA in as many places as I can find it on this top of these girders, because I want to lock them in position in this level configuration. So very carefully, with a tiny, tiny opening on a brand new bottle of thin CA, am I going to put some of that in here. And look at this, kids. This is as close to this as ever been to being finished. I've had parts put together before, but this is the first time I've had the domes down with the domes on top of them. I've had the bases down before, but just to give you a good idea of the whole Magilla, the last bit I just spent the last 10-15 minutes on was putting these two tiny cross bridges in. Had to replace a couple rungs. Those were the very finely 3D printed parts, and that was bound to happen. I snapped a rung or two, so I had to replace those. And I've touched up the paint. I have another round of paint touching to do. That was by no means the final paint. So the last thing to do, really, outside of putting the other two fuel cells on. I got the top one on, but it's not glued. I need to glue the fuel cells in. Would be to add this bridge part, and that's probably the last bit of construction we're going to do. Well, it's the last bit of construction that needs doing on the center island there, or the center hull. And then it's just a question of gluing down the domes, the dome bases. I'm not going to glue the domes to the bases because, like I've said, if anything happens and any of the landscaping jumps up and wants to make a run for it, then we can pop the dome off and clean that out or replace it, and then glue it back or put it back down. The domes are not glued in, but they're such a tight friction fit that I don't think we'll ever need to glue them down. The domes, I think we're going to have to glue in. They're just kind of loose. They're way too loose. And so we're going to have to glue those down. And then I've got the front antenna that needs to be added to it. And then that will finish the construction. So let me look at the time here. Oh my Lord, look at the time. It's almost 3 o'clock, which is when I usually start to tear down for the week. So I don't think I'm going to get any more done today. So we'll not be finishing this week. We will continue to work on this over the weekend and maybe finish it next week. Have a short couple of day report like we've done before. Okay, I've just cleaned up the desk and kind of moved things around, and I have decided to cease and desist all work for the week on this. I think we're at a good stopping point for today, or for the week. And if you wanted to try to get a view of the whole thing, now only half of the domes are in place because of the bucket underneath. The white will need touched up. The girder color will need touched up. Got the I'm down to a very small punch list though. I've got the other two fuel cells to attach. One last pass of touching up the paint. I'm going to wait till next week to put the bridge module down because I do need to touch the paint up underneath that area, and I don't want to have that in the way while that's happening. But I'm going to let this sit and pick at it this weekend and see if there's any other paint that I need to touch up. I do want to get the airbrush out and respray some things, but to do that I would have to do some pretty elaborate masking, so I may have to settle for just doing it by hand. But we've got, of course, the last big bit of construction other than the bridge is to put that forward antenna on, and I'm really holding off on that because then the whole model becomes that much more delicate with that thing on front of it. So once I get the domes in place and I get this on that new stand, then I'll put the forward radar on it. But turn the lamp off, see how it looks. Oh yeah, in the dark. There you go. Bum, bum, bum. Very nice. And that's going to bring us to the end of week 3 on the Valley Forge, and I brought a special guest to help me sign off for this week. This was one of the Wilco kits, the Wilco drone kits. I don't know whether they are still available or not, but I remember picking these up quite a few years ago at Wonderfest. I actually won an award because I had them one with the playing cards, and I think I had it in the humor category. But there you go. Sorry, I'll get back to you in a second. You just be patient. I'll get back to you in a second. That's where, yes, I've got my lockdown hairdo. It's getting longer. At least it's still there. People I know my age, it's all skin colored. But that's going to finish this up for the Valley Forge for this week. Again, another one of those where I could have rushed it, could have ran it through. Don't want to, because this deserves to have its time taken with it. Just a few little bits on the punch list left to finish it, and we'll no doubt finish it next week, barring any catastrophe, although this is 2020, so you gotta cross your fingers when you say that, because it'll just, 2020 will look at you and say, here, hold my beer. You want a catastrophe? I'll get you a catastrophe. So until next week, be good. Be good to each other. Stay safe. Be patient with each other. And we'll see you here next time.